Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this week's episode of Dad's on Wrestling. It's on Thursday, so it means the official day. Haha.
Dun, dun, dun.
That's right. We warned you it was coming. He is the Renegade. I am the Meach Machine. And we are here because we are now, as of this sitting, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 4-ish days away from Raw 1000. It's the talk of the wrestling world, especially after what happened Monday night, with all the big reveals that were going to happen. So we have decided to include as many of you as send in submissions to talk about your favorite Raw memories.
Right.
We're going to talk about our favorite Raw memories, some of the biggest moments in Raw history, and we're going to give our picks for our favorite Raw moment. You know, we all know that you came in '98, so you weren't watching wrestling when Raw premiered in January 1993. Of course, it was still that fake crap back then, you know.
Yes.
So
I came in about 5 years into it, you know, but I've been
around
around for about 14 to 15 years,
yes,
so, you know.
Yes, and you came around in the good time, obviously,
Yes,
during the Attitude Era, and, you know, you came around SummerSlam '98, is that what approximately?
Yeah, July, August 98.
Okay, so the whole Austin Undertaker thing was picking up steam.
Yes, very much so. On the way to the highway to hell.
That's it, baby.
At Madison Square Garden.
One of the greatest pay-per-view themes ever. And it just fits so well with those two guys rolling down the highway to Madison Square Garden in SummerSlam '98. But again, we're not talking about that. We're talking about Raw. And Monday Night Raw, you know, of course, the brainchild of Vinnie Mac. And, you know, they actually had an interview with him on WWE.com that they unearthed mysteriously, like, out of nowhere. Wink, wink. Yeah. Like, a lot of the same interview.
Was it in the basement where they film Are You Serious?
I'm not sure because they didn't show any pictures of Josh or the Road Dogg. So, but then
Did Puppet H conduct the interview?
He did not. But
Shout out to @WWE Puppet H. Puppet H follows me. I am one of, as of rolling camera, 13 people that Puppet H follows.
There you go.
Shout out to Puppet H.
I follow Puppet H. Puppet H is good people, even though he's felt. But anyway, that's all good. Raw, again, you know, a lot of the same questions that they asked when the 10th anniversary of Raw came around in 2003, as far as events, as far as, you know, the concept of Raw, and what he wanted to do was, you know, get back to the WWF's roots back in the day, which is, you know, just gritty and, you know, very just, you know, I almost want to say non-family friendly back then, because Raw was at the Manhattan Center, which, you know, is, you know, for lack of a better term, is a hole. So it is what it had never been there, but, you know, we hear stories from everybody. Yeah. And they filmed it there, and it was like up on like the middle part of the building or something. Just the ring was just like kind of up there, and having to get it into there, you know, the ring had to go up like the freight elevator. It took like 5 or 6 trips, whatever it was, to get the whole ring up there each and every week. It was madness. And for me, what stuck out with Raw the most early on was the differences from Superstars and Wrestling Challenge and the other shows to Raw. Raw featured Superstar versus Superstar, which we never saw on broadcast television before.
It was always like Superstar versus Baba Ganoush.
Exactly, Superstar versus what they called the enhancement talent back then. And they still have those every once in a while, right, Ryback? You know. Although Ryback's actually facing regular Superstars now, which is a welcome switch, and, you know, he's still beating them.
It depends on who you're talking about. I would hardly call Rex and Hawkins regular talent. They're still enhancement talent.
Well,
love them, nothing against them.
Yeah.
But you tell me the last time they had a meaningful match.
They've got the
that
paper,
they won.
But they've got the paper that says they're WWE Superstars in the contract. That's the difference between, you know, Ted and Jim Baba Ganoush from upstate New York.
At this point, Hawkins and Rex are no different than the Hardys when they were making their sporadic appearances.
This is very true. But Raw back then, you know, was not just about the sporadic appearances of a random guy from, you know, Poughkeepsie, New York or whatever. It was The Undertaker versus Damien Demento. Again, Damien Demento wasn't a big name for very long, but at the time The Undertaker faced him, Damien Demento was getting a big push. Yeah. You had Shawn Michaels versus Max Moon. Max Moon, again, was a character that didn't last very long, but back then it was like, wow, this is the Intercontinental Champions on Monday night. Yeah. You know, you had, you know, interviews with, you know, Yokozuna and Razor Ramon that night, which, you know, in the ring with Vince McMahon.
Bobby Heenan trying to get into the facility because he was locked out.
Yes,
I've seen the show.
Yeah, I know you have.
I may not have been watching, but I've seen the show.
Yes. Bobby Heenan tried to get in as his rabbi, as his aunt, but I don't do too much aunt to aunt, whatever. You know, and finally just being denied entry. And then what I also remember from that first year of Raw, the end of 1993, was the exodus of the Brain. I don't know if you've ever seen that clip or not, when Gorilla finally, you know, just has enough of Bobby and throws his headset off and takes Bobby and just dumps him out of the arena, and Bobby's got, you know, the whole, you know, typical, you know, guy leaving the hotel suite with like about 20 pounds of toilet paper and, you know, all the other stuff in the room, and we never saw Bobby again in the WWF as far as a full-time roster member. And you know what, that's but that's what Bobby wanted. He even said that in his first book. You said you hadn't read his first book. That's the exit he wanted. He wanted to be the total just Gorilla, just humiliating him on the way out, and within a month or two, he was on WCW with me and you. So that I remember that. I remember early on, one of the big main events was a loser leaves WWF, Ric Flair versus Mr. Perfect.
Yeah.
And that led to Ric Flair going back to WCW and, you know, telling everybody WCW, it's like freaking Oz up there. He's got his own freaking Disney World up there in Connecticut compared to what we have down here.
Those early years also remember the fact that, you know, they definitely tried to project that anything could happen with the 1-2-3 Kid defeating Razor Ramon.
Yes, and on the same night you had the first ever title change.
And
on Raw.
With Marty Jannetty defeating Shawn.
Yes. You know, I mean, you never would have thought after what happened earlier in the year with Shawn defeating Marty at the Rumble with the whole Sherry storyline, we'd ever see Marty again. And here he comes out of the crowd, peels off the hat and sunglasses, and Shawn's face turned about, well, whiter than my skin, that's for sure. And it was amazing, that great match with Mr. Perfect's involvement, and, you know, the big rematch which led to the debut of Diesel, which was a house show. We didn't see that. We saw highlights on Raw, and then you know, just early on, like you said, the whole anything that happened in the WWF really took shape with the debut of Monday Night Raw in '93.
And I think that's one of the things that's like seriously lacking from today's show. It's like we were talking about that when we were watching Money in the Bank, and how, you know, some of the returns that they could have done at the pay-per-view as fillers in the WWE title briefcase match, the Raw one,
right?
You know, could have helped that whole unpredictability.
Yep. I mean, you know, you're mentioning guys that are, you know, getting on in years like Slaughter and the Iron Sheik and things like that, but even still,
Rey Mysterio made his return on Monday night. Why couldn't he have made his return at the pay-per-view in the match?
Why couldn't
gone from 5 to 6?
Why couldn't the loser of the World Heavyweight Championship match inserted himself into the WWE Championship, you know, briefcase picture? Both of them are former WWE champions.
And since you had the WWE title match at the mid-card also, you could have put, you know...
Well, Bryan could have, but he wasn't a former WWE champion.
True, but they could have put the strap on Bryan and then have Punk in.
That would have been awesome. Alas, it was not to be. But
anyways, we're not here to talk about Money in the Bank.
But Bryan's getting married, so it's okay.
Yeah, no, anyways. Other great Raw moments. I mean, you've got, you know,
there's so many that go on.
The debut of Mr. Sacco.
Well, you're jumping ahead. You know,
oh yeah, we don't have to go chronologically. We'll be sitting here for 5 hours.
Yeah, you got in the debut, Mr. Sacco.
People love you, but they don't love you that much.
I know they don't. It's okay. You know, the debut of Mr. Sacco in '98. You talked about, you know, the evolution, not of evolution that's factional, though they were a huge part of Raw.
Yes.
The evolution of the new generation, and far as, you know, Brett and Shawn Michaels and, you know, Owen Hart and, as you mentioned, Razor Ramon, the 1-2-3 Kid, all those guys coming in their own after the departures of Hogan and Beefcake and Jimmy Hart and DiBiase and all those guys, you know, leaving either in ring roles or leaving altogether.
I feel like we just jumped back into the DeLorean and went backwards when I had taken us forward.
I did it on purpose. I was trying to, you know, I'm not trying to go chronologically necessarily, but, you know, you've got stuff like that. You've got 1996 and 97 with Shawn Michaels being the champion, leading the charge, and the slow, you know, burn of the Attitude Era bubbling. And, you know,
I was trying to jump ahead to the parts I could actually like talk more about.
I was gonna get there. I'm leading you to it. I'm leading you to it, man. I'm leading you down the right path. I promise. And then, you know, after the whole '97 year with Bret Hart and his just constant with Vince and Shawn and everything like that, and the debut of Mr. McMahon, really with Bret shoving him on his butt after that cage match, then leads into the part where Mr. Williams comes in, the Attitude Era, and Stone Cold Steve Austin, and his ascension, and the departure of Shawn Michaels, and, you know, the Undertaker evolving into this other side of him that we've never seen before, hadn't seen in a number of years, and even evolved even further because we never seen this demonic Lucifer side.
Yeah, I was
of him.
going to say he had been dark, but he was never Satan.
Yeah, I mean, you know, toward the end of '98, around the time of Mr. Sacco, we had Undertaker, you know, luring Paul Bearer back into the fold and turning on his own son Kane to join the Ministry of Darkness.
Yes, and the whole birth of the ministry, you know,
Yes.
taking Dennis Knight and converting him into Midian,
Yes.
having Mabel return and converting him into Viscera.
Yes.
You know, the acolytes who had been formed outside of the Undertaker being kind of brought into the fold and kind of being shown that they were part of his master plan all along.
Yes, and then the Brood. You know, the Brood being
God, the Brood.
Oh, the Brood. They still.
Those were the days.
I don't have a cigar to do Archie, but I got nothing. I'll smoke anyway. But yeah, you know, the whole evolution of the Brood in general.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
From Edge's random debut
yes,
to Gangrel and what is their past,
yes,
to the insertion of Christian as Gangrel's lackey, and then all three of them coming together.
yes, and putting together the best entrance to this day in wrestling history, in my opinion. I mean, you know, yeah, you've got, you know, Shawn Michaels coming down the zip line at WrestleMania, but
that was a one-time deal.
Yeah, each and every week on Raw, that fire pit would open and up they came, man. It was, and then later on, of course, with the Hardys, and into 1999 with the Hardys joining the Brood after Edge and Christian, you know, saw the light and moved away from Gangrel. There's just so many things you can talk about with Raw. I mean, you know, 1,000 episodes is a lot to cover, and you know,
20 to 30
minutes on this program. We're not going to take you for an hour because after the bell for an hour was enough.
That was only 30 minutes. Believe it or not.
Well, no, the one I did that was an hour. Remember the whole the hour long? It's on there. I saw it the other day. An hour-long episode.
It was a while back. I thought you were talking about this one.
Oh no. The only day was only 30 minutes. My God. But it was just. I mean, you know, what can you say? I mean, you know, you've got, you know, go ahead.
Like I said before we sat down, let's just talk about some of the best moments. You kind of ribbed you about earlier. I was trying to lead us down that path, and you just kind of wanted to give the whole backstory, which, you know, we can always pop on A&E's biography for, you know, the story of Monday Night Raw.
It's
you
true.
know, but the whole Austin McMahon storyline, you know, with all those shenanigans from the Zamboni and the Corvette.
Oh my God.
You know, Dr. Austin, the same night that Sacco debuted.
Have you ever been in close encounter with the Corvette after it got ruined?
Not.
They had it set up at WrestleMania 2000's Access.
I have heard the stories.
Yes.
I have seen the photos.
Well,
I wasn't able to go.
Yeah, my photos are somewhere lost in my archive. But there's one of me. Actually, there's one of the Corvette by itself, just drenched in cement, like, you know, the cement's all hard on the car, obviously. And there's one of me, and I almost got some serious shit for this. There's one of me in Vince's little wheelchair, doing like this, and security's come running at me. It's like, okay, it's time to go. That was my first access, you know, going into WrestleMania that year. And you know, you talk about 2000, you talk about again, Edge and Christian, the Hardys, the Dudleys, Jericho, Angle, Benoit, the Radicals.
There you go. Jericho, the debut of Chris Jericho on Raw. I remember watching that and damn near pissing myself.
Seriously.
When Jericho came out. It was like, it was kind of speculated, but dare I say it was the last big debut that nobody knew about.
Exactly. And you know what, him and then the Radicals, because the Radicals, I mean, Jericho was built up for months. And it was kind of like, you know, teased that he would be the money man, he'd be the guy. The Radicals walked on 2 weeks after leaving WCW. That was just like, what? He just, with the title, now, And of course, WWE botched that because they could have built it up as, you know, this guy was a champion of that other company, and Triple H just punked him out on SmackDown. But again, they botched that. They didn't say anything about that. And then they had the Radicals turn heel and join up with DX. It was like, okay. I was like, whatever. Typical WWF, you know, botching combined with WWF greatness at the same time, you know. So
you know, you want to talk about debuts. What about the original ECW Invasion?
Yes,
and then fast forward into 2001 with the through the crowd debuts of Dreamer and RVD,
Yes.
which helped form the alliance.
Yes, I still say to this day, I stand tall in my pride. I don't care what anybody says or thinks of me. I wanted the Alliance to win that battle. I wanted the Alliance to, you know, again, was the WWF really going to go out of business in Survivor Series 2001? Of course not. But the Alliance, week in and week out, were just booked as just punks to the point where they had to add Austin and Angle and the McMahon children and Paul Lee. And,
they weren't given the heavy hitters from the gate. I mean, when your big time player is Booker T
or DDP,
you're destined to fail.
Yeah.
If your big time players are Steen, Flair, Hogan, Savage, then Goldberg, maybe you actually got a chance.
Yeah, and the problem is they brought in every single guy you mentioned, plus Scott Steiner, plus all those other guys after the fact. You know, Flair debuted the night after the war was over.
Yeah.
It's like, what? You know, and you know, it was funny on Scott Steiner's website the morning of March 26, 2001, and even stuff like that. You know, the website of the real final WCW World Heavyweight Champion, not the WWF chosen one. This is Scott Steiner's website, BigPapaPump.com. So it's stuff like that, and then they bring Scott in later at the end of 2002. It's like, I grant that AOL Time Warner was paying them some buku bucks, but, you know, seriously, Vince, you're a freaking certified billionaire, you won the war, bring the guys in and do the real invasion. You know, learn from Jim Crockett's mistakes. You know, observe New Japan's successes. Raw could have been so much better following WrestleMania 17 if the Alliance angle had been a success, and it didn't happen. Invasion was a great pay-per-view, don't get me wrong. The pay-per-views were always pretty good. They always had quality matches back then, but Raw itself and SmackDown to a lesser extent was just like, okay, they're getting beat up again. They're losing again. So, and you know, after that whole era, you had the evolving again era after era. You know, throughout the history of Raw, not just throughout the history of the WWE, but through the history of Raw, you had the brand extension era, and Raw and SmackDown literally becoming two different entities within the same company. And Raw getting its own identity, being led by Ric Flair, and having The Undertaker only on that show, and having the NWO only on that show, and having Stone Cold Steve Austin make his decision after coming back from his first hiatus. And the whole, bringing in Eric Bischoff. My God, whoever would have imagined we'd be watching Monday Night Raw in the summer of 2002 and seeing Vince McMahon hug Eric Bischoff? It's like the devil hugging Saddam Hussein.
Who would have thought that we'd be watching Raw in January of 2010 and seeing Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels hug?
There you go. Exactly. Raw has always been the live show. Raw has always been the one where you tune in and you don't know what's going to happen. I mean, is it a little more predictable now? Yeah.
Obviously.
It's like, it's okay.
It took less than a year for Raw to become predictable for me, even during the height of the Attitude Era.
Okay.
It's a little bit sad to say that, but it was like once I became immersed in the sport, in the entertainment, in the culture, if you will, I was able to start seeing things coming before they happened.
Okay. Well,
I think the last big swerve that they did that caught me off guard was Vince McMahon being revealed as the higher power.
That, again, we're going backwards again, but that one was amazing because only Steve Austin knew for a week, and we didn't know what was going to happen. And then that led to the McMahon women against the McMahon men, and then bringing in Steve Austin as the CEO, and I think that was the true final high point of the Austin versus McMahon war. Yeah. Because after that, Vince lost the loser leaves, the loser loses power match at Fully Loaded with the Undertaker and Steve, and then after that, Vince was never truly the same maniacal Mr. McMahon that he had once been, and until
maniacal laugh.
Yeah.
Maniacal laugh.
Until much later, Vince did go certifiably crazy often, and he even went so crazy as to blow himself up in a limousine. And
Roland and Kendrick chuckled about it backstage.
Yes, they did.
Because it was so freaking retarded.
It was bad. It was bad, and I think the only true, if there is any silver lining in the dark cloud that happened the last weekend of June, it was the fact that storyline did not go anywhere after that. It was over.
True that.
Vince came back and was like, oh, okay, good. And then he even said to Jericho, because Jericho talks about it in the book, well, no, we killed Mr. McMahon. Vince is still alive.
Yeah.
What?
I think this is a good place to pause.
Yes.
We are going to throw now to some of your favorite Raw moments.
That's right.
So, why don't we just break out the little Wayne's World here. Here's what y'all had to say.
My favorite Raw moment would have to be was when the WCW was facing the WWE 10-man tag match, and after that match, the Alliance, or they became the Alliance, the Dudley Boys, Raven, Taz, they all turned on the WWE, and the Alliance was formed with WCW and ECW. That'll probably be my favorite Raw moment.
I have to say the entire storyline of the Ministry of Darkness, from Dennis Knight turning into Midian, or I don't know, pick any section. The Ken Shamrock angle with Stephanie, and then eventually turning into Vince McMahon as the mystery man behind the Ministry of Darkness. But that's my favorite Raw moment. The entire storyline of the Ministry of Darkness.
Hey, what's up? This is the Stat Boy here, and I'm going to let y'all know what my favorite Raw moment is. Now, don't get me wrong, there were tons to choose from. I could have easily picked when Mr. Sacco came out on my birthday, or I could have picked when Al Snow came out representing Greece, because that was my very first Raw. But the one Raw moment that I still watch it over and over again. It was happened at Staples Center. It was a DX reunion. Shawn Trips in the ring, he's getting ready to do his opening, let's get ready to sweat. But he doesn't get it off because he's interrupted by Hornswoggle. Here comes little Hornswoggle running around the ring, and he wants to be part of DX. To where Trips has to take out the run sheet, says, at 9 o'clock East Coast time, you're not in the opening segment, you gotta go under the ring. Hornswoggle don't want to go under the ring. Why? Because there's a monster under the ring. Shawn goes to check it out, comes back up with worms in his mouth. Here comes the boogeyman, and he wants to be part of DX. Like that. Next thing you know, Greg Khali comes out, and before getting turned into a human Slim Jim, he wants to be part of DX. Here comes Jonathan Coachman, tries to put a big stop to the shenanigans. Everyone runs off, and Triple H finishes the line, or Shawn gives the line, who writes this crap? Triple H goes, nobody, they're on strike, but we're not. Let's get ready to swing it! So there you go. The Raw DX in LA, Stat Boy approved, and that's my Raw moment.
My favorite Raw moment was when John Cena took on Shawn Michaels in a 40-minute match, April 23rd, 2007. That's one of the best matches of all time. How could that not be the best Raw moment of all time?
But the two moments that stand out for me the most was it was the night after Vince McMahon screwed over the Stone Cold one himself, Stone Cold Steve Austin. He was getting ready to award the belt to the Brothers of the Destruction, and out of nowhere you hear the shattered glass. Austin comes out on the Zamboni, and let me tell you, my friends, for those of you that were not there, I was. You could not hear his music. That's how loud it was. You hear shattered glass. After that was that was an emotional moment for me. On top of that was the Renegade can attest to this one, as long as it was Stat Boy somewhere in the back over there. When about a year and a half ago, it was Valentine's Day 2011, when the most electrifying man in sports entertainment today made his return to the WWE. Yes, I am talking about Dwayne The Rock Johnson. That entire place at the Ponda Center was on their feet. I don't care if you were in a wheelchair or not. You were on your freaking feet. And I lost my voice after that. And I don't know what else to say. So, hope you enjoyed my top favorite Raw moments.
My favorite Raw show, Stacy. Okay, first match. I don't know.
All right. Well, there's your picks for the favorite Raw moments, including some from the Casa here, and some from our friends from the hottest freaking place in the world right now, Las Vegas. Thanks to Chris and Bailey. Oh my God. You know, we were getting feeds from them Monday night of just how bad it was up there. What was Raw? It's like, you know what? Y'all chose to live up there. That's your bad.
You've been doing a lot of talking on this
have,
show.
and I apologize. So
we're gonna go ahead and let you keep talking for a minute, and we'll wrap up with me.
Okay.
What is your favorite Raw moment of all time?
Oh my God! And you know, it's harder for me because you know it's like choosing my favorite wrestling moment because I've been watching this for it'll be 22 years in October.
Yeah.
So I've been with Raw from number 1.
Yeah.
God, there's just so many. You know, it's funny we were joking about people are going to expect me to say Cena getting drafted and him coming to Raw after dominating SmackDown for the 2 years that he was there, and that was an awesome moment, and it was very unexpected, for a lot of people. But honestly, my favorite Raw moment, because it had so much potential in it, and had I known then what I knew months later, I probably wouldn't have picked this, but March 26, 2001. Seeing Shane McMahon, Shane's music hit in the Gund Arena in Cleveland and thinking, oh, here we go, it's on now, here we go. And here he comes, walking onto the beachfront set there in Panama City on Nitro and going, holy S. This is legit. It's not just, the WWF buying WCW and killing them. This is WWF management walking onto Nitro and like, that's right, we own this place now.
Yeah.
And setting up what should have been greatness. And, like I said, I rooted for the Alliance the whole year. And I hoped they would win. And that first salvo where Shane, fired the first shot in the war, if you will, the new war, had potential. And I think
it really did.
And I think that was the last great, unpredictable moment in Raw. So that's my favorite.
And I'm going to put you on the spot here. Something we haven't talked about, something no one's talking about. What do you think was the worst moment in Raw history?
Oh, there have been a few. Let's be real. I probably would have to say the worst moment in Raw history was... You know what? I'll think about that. And we'll come back to it after you give your answer for a favorite moment. Just throw it back to me while I think.
Okay.
What was your favorite Raw moment?
My favorite Raw moment, or should I say moments, are also for me two of the saddest Raw moments. Mm-hmm. And that would be Raw's Owen and Raw's Eddie. Mm. Primarily because on those nights we didn't see Edge, we didn't see Rey Mysterio, we didn't see, so-and-so and so-and-so. We saw Adam Copeland. We saw Oscar Gutierrez. We saw Steve Williams. We saw behind that curtain, and we saw the true emotion and feelings that these guys had for their peers. Mm-hmm. We didn't see the smoke and mirrors for those nights. And that's why those are my favorite moments.
It's funny that you say that's the favorite, because looking back now, that's...
It's like, granted, they were attached to some serious tragedies,
yeah.
but...
And I wouldn't say worst as far as, oh my god, the storyline was hideous or whatever, but that's definitely one of the hardest and one of the worst tries to watch Raw. was those 2 nights. And I still have the tape of Raw Zone on VHS. It's still in the garage.
Got it on DVD.
I know you burned it.
I've got both of them on
and
DVD.
I can't. It's funny. It's much like the same. You know what? I'll tell you what the worst one is right now. June 25th, 2007. The tribute to Chris Benoit. And I say that only because through the course of watching that broadcast on my work breaks. Yes, I did work. It happened. And then learning what was going on. And the broadcast still going on because it had already been fed to the East Coast and there was no news breaks yet really about what really happened. And watching the news when people were changing the channel and learning what was really happening, it was very, very brutal on me. I still have a very hard time with what happened 5 years ago, and it was we did a survey every now and then with my old channel about and one of the questions was what made me embarrassed to be a wrestling fan, and that always makes my list because you never expect that from him. Knowing what we know now, obviously, different circumstances have arisen, but it's like I talked with you the other day. I put in Hard Knocks, and seeing him, and seeing Nancy, and seeing Daniel celebrating WrestleMania 20 and the interviews with Nancy throughout the course of the DVD, and I cried, and I still do every single time. And I can't bring myself to watch the tribute show if I ever see it on download or whatever, just because it's just too freaking hard. And then the next night on ECW with Vince saying, "We hope you enjoyed that" type thing because you're not going to see that anymore. And that's the worst Raw moment for me because mainly because they messed up as far as giving the tribute, I guess.
Well, I think that if they hadn't given the tribute, people would have suspected something. And I already suspected something based off of the fact that it was the matches on the DVD. There was very little new footage aside from the interviews that they conducted with the wrestlers on that telecast.
Yeah.
And that kind of made me a little bit suspect that there was more going on than we had heard about.
It's funny you say that because Chris Jericho mentions it in Undisputed. William Regal's interview on that night, and how Chris Benoit wasn't who we thought, and there was more to this than meets the eye. It was very like everybody was like Chris was always this and always with the happy memories, and Regal was just very. Regal's always a cold-blooded character on the show, but Regal was just very chilly in his delivery, and I think even he knew, and that was very frightening.
Okay, it's hard to say that that's a good worst moment, but it's an interesting choice. Mine is a slightly more comical, yet still very, very disturbing.
Okay,
and that was the necrophilia of Katie Vick. Because that was just WWE sinking to a new low. I will give it to Hunter for having the balls to play that segment, but at the end of the day, I think even that's one that he'd like to erase from his history books.
I think there's a reason on the McMahon DVD that you don't see Hunter in that part of the interview. He doesn't say anything. Shane and Linda and Stephanie and Vince are all over that, and Vince is like, "I still like it," and everybody's like, "Oh, jeez." You don't see Hunter once during that whole segment.
But yeah, I would have to say that the Katie Vick necrophilia, him waltzing in dressed up as Kane, just that whole thing was, at least in my opinion, the worst Raw moment.
I think I didn't say it just
because at the end of the day, that was still a storyline.
Yeah.
Your worst Raw moment wasn't a storyline.
Right.
So that's why that one gets the nod from me.
Yes. Okay. There you go. And like I said, I think I blocked it out on purpose. That's why I didn't say it.
So, we hope you've enjoyed this trip back on memory lane. We know we've missed Raw moments.
Yes.
Don't shoot us. We could sit here listing off 1,000 Raw moments and keep you here watching us for 2 or 3 hours. You know you don't want to do that. So forgive us for missing some Raw moments. Don't flood the comment box with, oh, well, you forgot this, you forgot that.
We know.
Make that your video. Make that your favorite Raw moment. Granted, you know, you can't do a video response to it because by the time you see this, the fans' responses will already be edited in.
Well, it's a video response.
Exactly, but you can post video responses to this video and talk about it.
Yeah, we encourage that, please.
You know we forgot moments.
You know,
we are only human. We are not superhuman.
God damn it. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm going to throw these guys a bone here. If you didn't get your submission in for the video, if you get a really good one out there, since after the bell is on Monday morning, we'll throw it in there.
There we go. There you go. I like that.
That way the lead in 1,000 gets some more memories.
There you go.
You're welcome, Vince.
For Casa D18 Studios, I'm the Renegade of Wrestling, JJ Williams. He's the Meach Machine, and we'll see you next time.